You're listening to an IOE podcast.
Powered by UCL Minds.
This is Research for the Real World. Conversations with researchers about the paths they've taken to shape our everyday lives.
According to the UN Refugee Agency, 1% of the world's population, or 1 in 97 people, have been forced to flee their homes. The Red Cross has said that this has nearly doubled compared to 10 years ago, and 40% of this group are children. There are currently conflicts all around the world, which has made a lasting direct and indirect impact to us all. With the food, fuel, and the cost of living crisis, it feels like we're in uncharted waters, with everyone trying to stay afloat. Conflict has always been a source of mass migration. As people move, labels tend to blur, so I thought I'd describe what the difference is between a refugee and an asylum seeker. A refugee is someone who is fleeing armed conflicts or persecution, and they become recognised as refugees with access to assistance from states and aid organisations. An asylum seeker, on the other hand, is someone who claims to be a refugee, but whose claim has not yet been evaluated. This person would have applied for asylum on the grounds that returning to their country would lead to persecution on the account of race, religion, nationality, or political beliefs. So why is it important to explain these definitions? It's because unfortunately those labels will impact their experiences of receiving support, care, and legal representation. In this season of Research for the Real World, we want to highlight research that looks into the lives of refugees and asylum seekers, considering their experiences in the UK in terms of care, housing, education access, and human rights, as well as making recommendations based on the evidence. I'm delighted to give you a preview of what's coming up. Emily McLeod is speaking to Dr. Bernardita Muñoz Chereau. She's a Principal Research Fellow in Education at the Department for Learning and Leadership. Her research includes inequality in education and how we can support these disadvantaged children, including those that have been displaced. Have a listen.
So there is a way of assessing the extent of, the way in which a school is facing deprivation. So there's this income deprivation index, IDACI, and we found that it's, these schools are located in much poorer neighborhoods. So what I'm saying with this is there are certain there are certain things that the school is doing, and maybe they're doing a great job. But when it's time for the inspection, it's really difficult to disentangle those things. So maybe those teachers and those head teachers and those parents are delivering and doing a great job. But because they're working in a very challenged context, it seems if you just look at the outcomes, the academic outcomes, it might look like they're not learning much. That's not necessarily the case. So that's the point, is to bring in that context and understand what these schools are doing to improve the opportunities and the effectiveness of the school.
Emily also spoke to Professor Mette Berg. Mette is a professor of migration and diaspora studies based at the Thomas Coram Research Unit. She's a social anthropologist with research interests in migration, transnationalism, and diaspora formation, as well as urban diversity. Regionally, she specialises in Cuba and the wider Caribbean and Latin America region, as well as London and the UK.
This is a very contentious issue in the UK, and there's quite a lot of quite shrill debate about it. But essentially, people are fleeing conflicts, wars, persecution, and most people who flee war or conflicts, persecution in their countries of origin actually stay quite close to their home countries and seek refuge in neighbouring countries. But a small proportion of those who are fleeing flee further afield. It may be that they don't feel secure in neighbouring countries. It may be that they have family connections somewhere else. And so quite a small proportion of the world's refugee wind up in countries far away from where they set out from, and so the UK is one of them.
I spoke to Associate Professor Dr. Caroline Oliver. She's based in sociology at the Department for Education, Practice and Society. Her interests are in migration, identities, and urban sociology. On this podcast, she discusses a project to improve asylum seeker reception in the Netherlands, which was funded by the European Commission's Urban Innovative Actions Fund. Check this out.
And I think, it's really interesting because the traditional response to these sorts of centres is a kind of NIMBYism and an approach where it's, this is fine. We recognise that a facility like this needs to exist, but we don't want it on our doorstep. And the assumption from everybody who was working on the project was that the neighbourhood was actually quite hostile to the centre. So when it was announced that it was going to be set up, there were threats that it was going to be set on fire, that, the protests, the neighbourhood met up in a big community neighbourhood meeting and they, it was very angry and hostile and they were shouting at representatives of the local government there. But when the site was chosen and the asylum seekers began to arrive, we did this survey.
And finally, guest host Dr. Kerry Wong spoke to Dr. Rachel Rosen, who is an associate professor in the sociology of childhood based at the UCL Social Research Institute. Her research, teaching, and public engagement activities intersect the sociology of childhood and materialist feminist thought, with a particular focus on unequal childhoods, social reproduction, and migration in neoliberal border regimes.
What is the care that's provided? How is it experienced? What is it like for children who are on the move and young people who are on the move? And so we've spent a lot of time talking to children and young people about what care means, what about the care that they should receive, but often feel that they don't or often do not experience, as well as the care that they offer to others, the care that children themselves are involved in providing.
So get ready for season 17 of Research for the Real World. Search IWE Podcast to make sure you get the latest episodes as soon as they're available.
Research for the Real World is produced by IOE Marketing and Communications and IOE Research Development. The theme music was created by Rob Cochran. Tatiana Sotero Diaz is the series advisor, Amy Leibowitz is the series producer, and Jason Ilagan is the executive producer of the IOE podcast.
Thanks so much for downloading and listening to this IOE podcast.